Welcome to the final episode of the New Music Symposium. It is really good to see you here on Zoom or Facebook, and we appreciate your time very much. My name is Taek-soo Kim. I'm a composer, and it is my privilege to have been serving as the curator of this New Music Symposium hosted by the Korean Cultural Society of Boston. So far, we had presentations by Doctors Juwon Park, Jin An, Jihye Chang, Donald Witt Womack, and Yoonji Lee. I appreciate all their inspiring presentations. Each presentation had around 15 Zoom participants and over 300 Facebook views, and we appreciate your ongoing interest and participation. I also would love to take a brief moment to express my special gratitude to the Korean Cultural Society of Boston and its music committee, including its chair, Ms. Yu-kyung Kim, all its board members, and its president, Dr. Byung Kim. Without their kind and generous support and adventurous and forward-thinking mindset, this series would not exist. Let's give an applause to everyone who made this possible and so enjoyable so far. Okay, I am very excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Juri Seo, and here is her picture. Dr. Juri Seo went to Yonsei University in South Korea, and she holds her master's and doctoral degrees at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She is currently serving as Associate Professor of Music at Princeton University in New Jersey. Her music encompasses extreme contrast through her compositions that are unified, fluid, and complex. She enjoys combining fascinating aspects from music in the past, especially 20th century, if I understand correctly, including expanded timbral palette and an orthodox approach to structure, functional tonality, counterpoint, and classical form. Her music tends to be fast changing with respect to tempo and dynamics, and her music explores the serious and the humorous, the lyrical and the violent, and the tranquil and the obsessive. She has received honors from Guggenheim Fellowship, Kusevitsky Commissions from the Library of Congress, a Fromm Commission from Harvard University, and a Goddard Lieberson Fellowship from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. She hopes to create music that loves and that makes a positive change in the world, however small, through the people who are willing to listen. If you are curious further about her and her music, please visit her website, www.jurisamusic.com. And if you have any question or comments, please feel free to leave them on the Zoom chat or Facebook comment. And without further ado, please welcome Dr. Juri Seo.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Taek-soo and Korean Cultural Society of Boston for organizing this event. It's an honor to be here. Um, I thought I would begin by playing a short piece of mine called Fugue. And this is one of the three pieces that belong to a larger set of pieces called Contrapuntal Forms. And I wrote this for this group called Latitude 49, which consists of clarinet, saxophone, violoncello, piano, and percussion. Um, I'm gonna play the piece first before I talk about this so that I can get some music in your ear. I'll do that without the score, so you'll just have to look at my face for now. Thank you. Um, okay. Um, so, usually in a talk like this, we listen to a lot of excerpts, but I thought maybe I would do the opposite and play the same piece twice. So I'm gonna now talk about this piece for a little bit and then maybe play it again. Texter, am I still too soft? Is my voice okay? I can't hear you.
I think it's okay for me, but yes, it's better, much
Okay.
better now.
All right, I'll just speak louder. Um, Now I'll show you the score of this piece. Okay. So yeah, it's a very short piece, but it really encapsulates my artistic and real personality really well. Um, right? It's a funny piece, and the humor doesn't just come from this lively thematic materials. It's also from the way it unfolds. There's a lot of like stylistic wrong turns and stuff like that, and that generates some humor. And another important aspect of this piece that's also commonly found in many of my other works is this hybrid style. So it's a fugue, so that's a classical form. So I'm using this 18th century form, but I'm putting like jazz harmony on top of that. So even this subject, you see the score right now, right? I'm so sorry for being. Okay, so the opening, we have this fugue subject that has this tritone interval. And that can go in two different ways by using tritone substitution, which is a technique that's used in the 19th century, but it's much more common in jazz. So I can resolve it like this. But if I harmonize it like this, then I can go there. So right off the bat, I have two different possible harmonic directions. So that was a very intentional choice. And then, yeah, I'm not gonna get too nerdy about this, but um, somewhere in the middle, I'm making this retrograde. Retrogrades are hilarious because when you play ba ba da 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 like backward, it becomes da 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 ba ba. So this metric character totally like changes. So I'm using that as a new section. So I'm writing, you know, um, a new exposition using this retrograded theme here. And I'm not sure if you heard this, but there's a moment where I make a stylistic turn, which happens somewhere, not somewhere, it's right there. So right at that moment, I'm going from like jazz to like 19th century. So I'm imitating like Mozart counterpoint here. Um, it sounds to me more like Mozart than Bach, even though it's very contrapuntal because of the way I don't know. I think it might be because it's so dramatic. Um, yeah, so there's some kind of Mozart sounding section, and it's so interesting because you can, if you harmonize this like that, it can sound like jazz, but if you go like, you can shift it just slightly. You change the theme and the harmony a little bit, and then you can change the stylistic illusion instantly. So that's what I'm doing here. So we take this meta stylistic turn to the 19th century, and then at the end of that section, we got this big, which is like basically just 2/5. This is a cadential motion. And instead of resolving it like that, I'm using one of the oldest tricks in the book, which is called the deceptive cadence. So I'm going. Right, so there's this deceptive harmonic motion, and on top of that, there's also deceptive stylistic motion. So back to jazz harmony. Okay, so I'll play this one more time. Maybe you'll get more of the details this time with the score, maybe. Okay, there's some significant lag here, so give me just 1 second. Okay. so that's jazz from contrapuntal forms, and the two other pieces are canon and cantus firmus that I won't play, but I'll play another piece for the same group, Latitude 49. That's kind of in the similar vein. So it's kind of jazz, funk, fusion, but within classical form. And this piece is called ostinato. Ostinato means like repeating bass figure. I'll show you the score as well. And this piece uses kind of an interesting form. So this is something that I started using about 10 years ago. And my composition teacher from Illinois, Reynold Tharp, he taught me that. But I don't know where he got it from, so I definitely did not invent it. And it's simply, you know, alternating A, B. So like you alternate two different ideas, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. But you change the proportions between the sections. So you might present like B idea as an interruption initially, but then B might grow over time while A material gets shortened. Then A becomes an interruption later. For me, whenever I try to do that, either A or B or both explode at some point. That always happens. It's probably the way like both of them are growing and like interacting and merging. So for me, it's always A, B, A, B, A, B, explode. And I think it's so interesting that I just cannot predict what this explosion is gonna be. And that's, you know, it's sometimes like some crazy cadenza, or sometimes it's just like some big sound mess kind of stuff. And in this case, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's just this kind of climactic harmonic section toward the end. And in this piece, B section, so A section is, you know, this first two bars, that's just a pickup. And after that, we get this A section, which has this repeating bass figure. And that's more or less always there. And B section is always in compound meter. And they're not like too different from each other, so, but I think you can hear the entrance of B section. So compound meaning there are three subdivisions per beat. So we get da 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 for the B section. And what was interesting for me in working this way was to like create some kind of polyrhythm within B section. So for example here, so we get like this 3 against 4, and I'm using this new metric division 4 to redefine the tempo of A when it comes back. And A, you know, along with the tempo, the character of A also changes. So that happens a few times. So 3 against 4, that's pretty simple, but later it gets pretty involved. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to find it. I'm just gonna scroll back up and play the piece. So in any case, just to summarize, there's A, B, A, B, A, B, explode, and B sets up some kind of tempo modulation for A that follows. And this is about 5-6 minutes long, and I'll play the whole thing. Yeah, thank you for listening. So this jazz fusion thingy is something that I'm still kind of developing. So this is just one of the strains of, styles that I'm kind of working on. Um, and now I would like to move on to the second section of this talk. You don't know it, but I designed it in 4 sections. So I'm now moving on to the section about my piano music. So as you could probably hear from these two pieces, piano plays an important role in my works. Um, and, that's probably just from the simple fact that I am a pianist. Um, so piano is an interesting instrument. So if you're not a contemporary composer, you might be surprised when I say that piano is an extremely limited instrument. Um, so contemporary composers have a lot of difficulty with this instrument. Well, I mean, it has this paradoxical status, right? So it's everywhere. It's the instrument of Western classical music, and it's in every concert hall. But it's really developed, it's invented specifically to play the 19th century music. So whatever we learned in the past century about sound, color, this shifting microtones, those things you just simply cannot play on this instrument, right? And there's no control over the envelope, over the sustain. So you play a note on the piano, and the only thing you can do is whether to, the only control you have is whether to play loudly or softly. That's it. Like you can't even change the timbre, right? Loud or soft. And once you hit it, the only thing you can do is to let it go. That's the only control you have, right? So, yeah, and tuning is fixed, and it's quite frustrating. So, yeah, a lot of contemporary composers came up with solutions, right? Like getting inside the piano, putting objects in there, and bowing the piano, um, just to get around these limitations. Um, and I say all of that not to say that I'm frustrated with this instrument, which is true sometimes, um, but to say that I am really more focused on the strength of this instrument rather than the weakness. So like some obvious things like, piano has this gigantic range. It encompasses almost the whole like hearing range of humans, minus about 2 octaves, right? So that's great, and we can play something like really fast, right, without breathing, like continuously. And I can't think of any other instrument that can do that, right? So there's like huge advantage in terms of building textures. Um, and for me, maybe the most important strength of the piano is its practitioners, right? The pianists. And the classical pianists have this shared knowledge and experience, right? So you can tell a classical pianist to use conventional pedal, then they know what that means. And I could give them like some quotation from Beethoven, and they have this memory of playing that piece. There's a lot that comes with that experience. And for example, I sometimes use this marking rubato in the style of Chopin. And it's amazing that they, like what kind of knowledge does that require, right? It's not something that you can learn from just playing a single piece by Chopin, right? So it could be like you have to play a lot of pieces by Chopin, you have to listen to other people playing Chopin, and you might even read about rubato. You have this historical understanding, and that's so exciting for me to kind of tap into that kind of depth. So when I wrote my first piano sonata, I was thinking about that. So I decided early on it's gonna be about the strength of the instrument, about the strength of its practitioners. So I'm not gonna go inside the piano. It's gonna be all on this 88 keys. You're gonna play it like conventionally, more or less. And I'm going to use markings like rubato in the style of Chopin to really tap into this depth of knowledge and experience. Okay, so now I show you my piano sonata from 4 years ago. if I can find it. Okay, here it is. Now that's actually Beethoven's piano sonata. I'll talk about that a little bit too. And this is mine. And this sonata is kind of like kill 10 birds with one stone kind of piece for me. So I it was a way of engaging with this, my obsession with Beethoven. I love Beethoven, and I had to do something about that. And my obsession with counterpoint, and there are like fugues all over this thing. There's like triple fugue in the middle of the development section, so I got that out of the way. And there was also this like thinking about the strength of piano as an instrument and pianist, and all of that went into this piece. And it's a very long piece, so I'm not going to play all of it, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. So the title is La Hammerklavier, and that is like polylingual title. So Hammerklavier is German, so you would usually say Das Hammerklavier, and La comes from this Italian feminine definite article. So it's kind of a way of putting like a feminine touch on this quintessentially like patriarchal composer's most muscular work. So Beethoven's Hammerklavier Sonata. So before I play my piece, I'm actually gonna play Beethoven's Hammerklavier, the first 2 minutes of it, in case you're not familiar with this work. So it's one of the last 5 sonatas by Beethoven, and it's the biggest and notoriously difficult work. I'm not gonna scroll the scores for this, but you guys can just listen for 2 minutes. Okay, so yeah, I should stop playing Beethoven because it's my talk, right? Okay, so my piece is very closely related to this Beethoven piece. So you only heard the first 2 minutes, but this piece is like over an hour long. And my treatment of this piece is to kind of like break it up like in a blender. So you make it like all fragmented, kind of like glass, you break it and then you make mosaic out of it. So you will hear like theme fragments from Beethoven in my work, but my piece has its own logic. So yeah, for example, the second movement will have this kind of like long section. The first 3 minutes is about like looking for Beethoven's theme, as if you're like listening to it in your dream. So you have these fragments of Beethoven, and then at the end of this search, you arrive at a theme. So you find a theme, but it's actually a wrong theme that combines like 2 different phrases from Beethoven that I composed. So there's this wrong theme, and then there are 10 variations on that wrong theme. So that's the second movement. But the first movement, it's kind of funny. So I want to talk about this opening leap. So this is the famous leap. So if you're not a pianist, you might not be familiar with this. But that the left hand there, right? So that leap is extremely fast at this tempo. So it's like, but it's far. So like if you actually make that leap with one hand, there's a good chance that you're gonna miss that. But then like why don't you just use your right hand? Because that's a very easy solution. So you can use left hand, right hand, and then you can jump to the top. But if you do that, then you get criticized because you're not reflecting Beethoven's daring spirit. So I was watching this like lecture by Andrea Schiff, whose recording you just heard. He was really one of my favorite pianists. And he was talking about this piece and specifically for this leap. And he was like, well, like you have to take that leap. You can't use your right hand, right? And he was like going on. And then he played it and he went like that, like ba-dun, da-dun, da-dun, bum, which is wrong because it's supposed to be da-dun, da-dun, right? So that's like substituting one mistake with another mistake, right? And that's how like a lot of pianists play it. If they make that leap, they always make the mistake with the rhythm. So in my piece, I was thinking like, what if I just made all the mistakes, right from the start. So so there's that rhythmic mistake. So mine goes bam bam da da like that, and it's also wrong chord. So I'm using this. This is polytonal harmony. So I have B major chord on top and B flat on the bottom. So two different keys presented at once as two different tonal centers. So when I go to the dominant, so Beethoven goes to that, does something like that, and I do like that. So right hand has its own harmony, left hand has its own harmony. And on top of that, it's like mosaic, so it has like fragmented themes. So let me just play the first few minutes of this piece. This is Stephen Beck. And I'll play a little bit toward the end so you just get a sense of this arc. Um, so this is the final 3 minutes or so. Yeah, I won't do the score for this. Okay, so if you want to listen to the rest of it, it's available on YouTube and Spotify. Texto, are we good to go on? Yeah? Okay, great.
So we are
So,
going to briefly reset the Facebook Live for a moment. And as soon as it's done, we can just resume our discussion.
okay, just let me know.
Thank you. Just it's for some reason it was disrupted by the Facebook. Okay, so as soon as Dr. Pyong Kim give us a sign for good to go, we will. But by the way, that's a fabulous piece. So much fun.
Thank you.
And yeah, we have this comment/question actually. Let's use this time for that.
Okay.
So Jin An on Facebook, she said, "So fun and brilliant." I think it's for the first piece, the second piece you shared. And there seems to be a great fluidity and improvisatory intuition with strict structure, which I agree with. And could you talk about the intuitive melodic lines in that piece?
Intuitive melodic lines, did you say?
Hmm. Yeah,
So, like
not in the
something that's
piano
like,
sonata, but yeah,
right, I understand. But right now, the Facebook is not live, right? So she won't be able to
no.
hear my answers.
Oh, yes,
She's
that's
not here, right?
correct. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know.
we
What do
are
you want me
live.
to do?
Okay, let's
We are?
resume.
Yeah, are we good? Okay, so I'm gonna
Yeah, so
answer yeah, Jin An's question. So thank you for the
yes.
question. So yeah, so there are like some lines that sound like they're improvised. I think those are the kind of lines that I would have given if I was working with jazz musicians. I would not have composed them. So yeah, it was just like a way of getting the feel for it. But like improvisation is like such a big topic, and I have not been able to really find a way to really incorporate improvisation within my work, because my music tends to have like mostly fixed details that kind of contribute to this narrative that's very fixed in nature. So I can't really work with, you know, indeterminate aspects. So I personally haven't really found a way to work with improvisation, except just like composing lines that sound like improvisation, right? Okay, so now I'm going to move on and show you another piano piece. So, after that Beethoven piece, I was like a little tired of virtuosity, so I just had to take a break. And at that time, my twin nieces, my older brother has his twin daughters, and they were about 8 at that time, and they had been like taking piano lessons. And I thought it'd be really sweet to, write some pieces for them. So I wrote 7 piano four hands pieces for them. Um, and now the problem with children's pieces for me is that I've tried to do it a few times, and every time it gets like harder and harder until it gets just impossible. And that happened with this piece as well. Luckily, there are 7 pieces in the set, so a couple of them are manageable, and some of them are just impossibly difficult. And my nieces did play 2 of these, and I was very proud of them. And this piece is really, I guess it's more about like the way it feels. So it's kind of like, having fun with piano. So, piano forehand pieces, sometimes cross hands and you kind of like make these choreographies. Um, and I was composing the choreography for my nieces as well as, the sounds here. So if you look at here, so the opening, one of the pianists is doing, but the other one is like right on top of it. So you have to go like boom, bum, like that. So there's a lot of plays like this in the first one, and I even did those drawings too. It's just a lot of fun. And the second one is about rock paper scissors, and I'm using these hand shapes as fingerings. So you actually play the piano like like that. Um, and I think it sounds pretty horrible. It's really more about just the act of doing this. That's kind of fun, but it sounds pretty bad. I mean, once it starts building, like it's okay, but initially, like the first minute is pretty rough. So I provided this fingering for them as well. And toward the end of this movement, there's this Korean version of rock paper scissors, which is basically well, hold on. Before we get there, like we have this series of like kind of winning and losing streak between the two players, and they're going like on top of each other like this. And the last gesture here, this is a Korean version of rock paper scissors. So I asked around, and people don't know about this here. So you do it with both hands, and then you subtract one. It's called 가위바위보 하나 빼기. So rock paper scissors, subtract one on cue, and that's how you determine the final winner. So that's what's going on here. So they have two hands, and they subtract one, and that's the way, then you get this resonance, and it ends with a draw at the end, right? Both of them have scissors. So that's kind of a fun piece. And the third movement has 아리랑 in it, but I actually combined this with 우리의 소원은 통일. Our hope is reunification. Is that a good translation? So yeah, North South Korea reunification. So there's this song that's hoping for that. So I put 아리랑 on top of that tune. And the fourth movement is about birds. So it's just chirpy bird motif thingy. And my personal favorite is this one, ant. I don't know if you guys knew about this, but ants have 6 legs, and when they walk, they would like move 1, 4, 5 forward, and then move the rest of the legs. So they like kind of I don't know, they go like that and then like that. So I was making a series of like 6-note chords that do exactly that. So you always move 3 notes and the other 3 notes follow. And these chords get bigger and bigger, and at the end you get like a large ant. That's pretty cute, right? And the sixth movement is about bicycles, and we have a chopstick like laying on the keys, making this noise that sounds like bicycle chain. And this has Korean bicycle song in it. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum, or something like that. So that appears toward the end. And the last one is the chopstick. So yeah, I just remember that as a kid, I loved playing chopsticks. Like most kids, it's so annoying when they just keep playing it. So it's my take on chopstick, but you make like kind of Steve Reich like minimalist gestures to kind of flesh out this texture. Okay, so I think I talked too much about this, but let me just play at least some excerpts from this work. Okay, I'll play a little bit of the bicycle movement. So I did this before. That's the end of the ant movement. Fast forward a little bit. So that's the Korean song. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop this here because I want to talk at least a little bit about the about the string pieces. So that was really fun project, except that my nieces stopped playing the piano. So I don't know what's the future for these pieces. They've moved on to violins, so I'm gonna have to write like violin pieces now. Um, okay, so let me just talk briefly about the string pieces. So a few years ago, I was connected with the Argus Quartet, which is one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So the Argus Quartet is amazing, and I got to write a huge like string quartet for them. And I wrote the first movement at the Copeland House um, during the Copeland House residency. If you don't know what it is, it's basically a residency for composers to go there and live in the house of Aaron Copeland and compose. In fact, I think Teksu, you were there right after me, right? That was like our first communication. Teksu like sent me a message and asked whether this Korean food in the
Yeah,
freezer was mine.
right. There was a Korean food in the Korean dumpling in Aaron Copeland house I found, and I asked Juri if it's hers.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't mine, but yeah, I didn't even see that. Um, but anyway, so it was written during my residency. And I mentioned this because this piece sounds very much like that place. So it sounds like that place at the time I was there. So I was there in February, March, when the season was changing from winter to spring. So there was this kind of turbulent changes in the weather. So we got a lot of snow that year, but then like the sun will come up and there will be like the spring warmth. So there were like just these changes that were very inspiring. And on top of that, there were these birds named black-capped chickadees, and they are very common birds in North America. But those chickadees at Copeland House, they have this magical quality. I think it's something about like the kind of forest-like surroundings. Their songs, they just sounded so beautiful. So I made some field recordings and I used their song, which is actually very very simple. It just goes like two note goes like that. So I used that as the theme in my piece. So at that time, I didn't know this piece was gonna blow up into like 4 movement, 30-minute piece. So I was just working on the first movement, and later I came back home and I continued to work on this piece. So it took about a year, like actually a complete cycle of 4 seasons. And then at the end, I named it Infinite Season because I could not call this 4 seasons, right? Because there's another famous piece by this guy called Vivaldi. Um, I was gonna make 4 seasons landscaping joke, but yeah, maybe not. Okay, so yeah, I called it Infinite Season because these are really not about 4 seasons. These are about seasons transitions. So I'm exploring the continuities between the seasons. So the first movement opens with this bird songs. So you hear this black-capped chickadee calls there, and then there's a lot of contrapuntal writing after that. And at the end of the first movement, um, there's something that's kind of magical when you transition from like abstract musical sounds to field recording. So this is the first time I tried that, and I thought it was very interesting. I would want to try this again. So at the end of the piece, so I stopped doing this contrapuntal stuff, and I expand the range and start this bird song imitations again. And then I brought in this field recordings from Copeland House to overlap with the live string quartet. So I don't think we have time to listen to all of it, but I'll play at least first 4 minutes or so and the last couple minutes of this piece, this movement. Okay, so this is the Argus Quartet. play a little bit of the ending now. Yeah, thank you for listening. Um, I think I need to stop now, right? For questions? What do you think?
You could go on for
Really?
like a 10 minutes or so, yeah, and we
Oh,
can
okay. I
still
thought
have
I
some
had to.
questions.
Okay, cool. All right. In that case, I thought I had to finish by 8. I thought I was going way over. Okay, so this is gonna be interesting now. I will show you some of my percussion pieces. Okay. So some of you know that I am married to a percussionist, um, and we've been together forever. So when we first started dating, like dozen years ago, I was always like frustrated, like after concerts, like he would take like hour or two, like just packing things up. Because like pianist, you go and you play and you're done. You just leave with your, your score and you're just done. Percussionists like have to put everything away, and it takes a lot of time. And I just like I wanted to write, kind of small instrument pieces so that like you can just play and just throw it in the backpack and go. Right, so this whole series, portable percussion series, was born out of that kind of very simple selfish desire to wanting to go home after the concert. And they really kind of caught on, and they are played quite frequently, and those are actually my most played pieces are not this piano sonata, which was never played after the premiere. But these portable percussion pieces do get a lot of performances. So let me show you the first one in the series. So this is from like 2009, and this is a flexatone quartet. And if you don't know what flexitone is, you will see here. So the players are usually seated among the audience initially, and they come out. You see. Okay, so it's basically this flexible metals with beaters attached, and there's really not much you can do with this instrument. You bend it, and you hit it with the beater on top. So this is kind of like the opposite of piano situation. So there's no wealth of knowledge and experience in playing this instrument. So I kind of have to like write everything from scratch. So let me show you some excerpts from this piece now. So this is toward the end of the first section. Kind of goes on like that. And this is maybe my favorite section where they bow the flexitones. Yeah, so it actually sounds quite beautiful, right, when played like that. And the final section, this is always the audience favorite. So the performers get further and further from each other, and they throw the sound to each other. So there's this beautiful panning effect. Okay, so that was the first one. And you might say that that tam tam is not portable, and that's true. And sometimes they play with like tiny gongs, and that works fine. Um, okay, so that's the first piece in the series, and that was kind of a hit. You know, people like this piece a lot, and as you can see, I have like 66,000 views, which is like which is a lot for someone like me. Okay, so I thought, you know, I'd write a series of pieces to fill up a concert. So there are a few other pieces, but in the interest of time, I'll show you a piece for frying pan. So this is written for my husband, Mark, and this is basically metal chopsticks on cast iron pan. And I don't know how you guys season your iron pans. It's not as easy as people make it sound, and there are like cast iron pan snobs, and you know I have never been able to maintain them well, and they would always rust and become unusable. So I thought maybe I just like use it as a percussion instrument. So that's how this piece was born, and it's inspired by chopstick fights from like martial arts films. I don't know if you ever seen those. Like they sometimes like fight like with like with chopsticks, and like one person would like pick up a dumpling, and the other person would like swing it like out of the hands, and I always I get so excited in those scenes because it's just I don't know, it's like tremendous amount of humor and dexterity, and I really enjoy that. So that was the inspiration for this. So I just play a little bit of the piece. It's almost 8:20, so. Okay, so I think I'll stop here. Um, so you can find all of these videos, and there are three more portable percussion pieces that I've written, and one of them is Triangle Trio for triangle castanets and tambourine. um, and there's Kritalis dipped in water, so there's a lot of fun um, pieces that you can find on YouTube. Okay, so all right, what do we do now, Texu?
So we are inviting all of us to ask questions or give Juri, Dr. Saw some comments. Feel free to chime in. But I will just begin with the custom question I always ask to all the guest speakers, which is, so what does it mean to be a musician with Korean heritage?
Yeah, so I knew about this question, so, so that doesn't mean that I'm prepared. Um, yeah, that is a very important question. I just until recently I actually didn't think my Korean heritage had anything to do with my music because my music is very deeply rooted in Western music, right? But I've kind of come to a different understanding recently. So there is this Korean version of studying Western music, and that's where I studied. Right, so there's I was in Korea until the end of my bachelor's, and I was educated in Korea. So I'm trained in this Korean pedagogical model of teaching Western music, and that's very much like that. That's quite different from here, actually, right? So it's very craft based, and that's probably where all this pastiche writing and polystylism is coming from. Um, yeah, so I mean, going forward, I don't want to be stuck here. I definitely want to explore Korean traditional music as well. So I'm starting to branch out a little bit. I'm writing a new piece for Gamin, a new Piri solo piece in the upcoming year as well. So, yep.
That's great. Yeah, and since you are ready for the other question, I just wanted to throw something I didn't tell you before, but I love I love the fact that you have a lot of humor in your music, and I try to incorporate some humor in my music as well. And sometimes I fear for the criticism about like, oh, you're not a
Mm,
serious composer. How do you deal
right.
with it?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think about that a lot, of course. Yeah, I think it's there is a tendency to equate like depth with darkness, right? Especially in like contemporary music, and I don't buy that. I think darkness is enhanced by the existence of humor. Um, yeah, so it's not something like frivolous that we do. There is certain depth, both in character and as a narrative potential, that exists in humor. Yeah, so I have no problem with it. But it is actually very challenging to incorporate humor within a serious context. You actually do need a lot of time and kind of structural depth to achieve that, which is also what I'm interested in. Yeah.
No, that's great. I am on the same boat, but it's just meaningful to hear someone else says it like so um, convincingly. Um, about your piano, the children's piano piece, that's beautiful and very interesting.
Thank
One question was, did you actually painted all the illustration?
you. Yeah,
Who did it? Oh, you did.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. You're multi-talented for sure.
No, I just like copied those drawings from like other paintings. So yeah, I'm not really very creative in that way.
Okay. You're creative only in music, I guess. Okay, I will just accept your humbleness. One another question I always ask to all the guest speakers is how have you been during this pandemic? How has it affected on your music or your music making? Do you even interact with
Hmm.
the circumstance? Or yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't think it had like a huge impact on composition really because it's something that you do alone anyway. It was really more about like kind of teaching and the university work with all the work involved in transitioning, and that was not easy. So that took up a lot of energy. But other than that, like yeah, I mean, of course, like canceled premieres, those were all kind of disappointing, but they're all coming back next year, hopefully. um, yeah, so I'm just looking forward to it, and I have a few deadlines, luckily. So yeah.
Right. We do have a question on Facebook. Clara Kim from
Hey,
Argus Quartet.
Clara.
Assume, yes. Hi, Clara. Um, are most or all your pieces inspired by outside influences?
Hmm.
That's the question. Yes.
What is outside influence, though?
Well,
I'm
I mean, that's yeah.
I'm trying to think like how can you not be influenced by anything, right? It's always there could be like some other piece like Beethoven's Hammerklavier that could be my inspiration. It could be the nature. Um, I
For
don't know.
example, you can just think about
Such a great question.
the
Actually, I never
melody
thought about
melody
it.
coming in from your inside or some sound coming
Mm.
from inside.
It's I mean it's always coming from inside, right? Um,
Very
yeah,
philosophical, yes.
I don't know. Yeah, I think what she's trying to ask is whether there's like some purely abstract, origin for my music. Um, yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. But even the piece like that turtle piece, like the first piece, I mean, is that like inspired by anything specific? I don't think so. I think that's pretty abstract. So your inspiration could be like musical language, right? That's already kind of dissolved in you, and that works like intuitively when you try to compose.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
makes sense. Clara says hi back.
I love you.
Okay. Anyone in the Zoom session have any question or comments? You can feel free to just unmute yourself.
Too shy, I guess.
Oh, yes, we
Oh, hey,
have Dr.
Andre.
Master has some
Nice
question.
to see
Okay.
you.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Hi, Juri. Uh,
Hey,
nice to hear talk.
nice to
What
see
are
you.
you working now?
What am I working
What,
on?
what are
I'm
you up
working
to?
on. Yeah, I'm just trying to finish the semester, and I'm working on this new piece for Poulenc Trio, which is bassoon, oboe, and piano, collaborating with Hanji Wang, who is an accordion virtuoso. So it's a quartet, kind of a large scale. Yeah, and I've been working on that. I actually don't have a clear idea about larger form, so I can't really tell you much about it. But I've been combining a lot of ideas for that piece.
Cool.
Thanks for asking.
any other question?
So to that end, I mean, thank you, Jury, for this wonderful
Hey,
talk.
Cora.
Hi. When you start a piece, I was just wondering, I mean, these are just such wonderful masterpieces and to see the diverse sides of your brain. But when you start a piece, do you sketch out graphically? Do you
Hmm.
contour a form? Do you make a timeline? I guess I'm just wondering what are your sketches before you start your formal process?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So for me, the opening of the piece is usually like found rather than composed. So, the way I demonstrated like opening of that Beethoven sonata piece,
Mhm.
that makes it sound like I sat down and I just kind of worked theoretically, but
Yeah.
actually wasn't like that. I was basically sharing what I found about the thing that came to me by analyzing, really. So for me, the composition process, at least for the opening of the piece, I like this sense of finding it. Like, and it doesn't necessarily come from me. It comes from like the struggle, and when I actually find it, it has this distinctive feeling of coming from elsewhere. Like, you might describe it as spirit or God or ancestors. Um, in any case, it doesn't feel like I'm composing it. So there's quite a bit of like improvisation, kind of playing around with ideas, and this sense of finding. Yeah. So my sketches are pretty messy. So I might have like some notes. I might have I don't know, like graphs or whatever. Yeah. It's
I guess I
a
was
little bit of
wondering,
everything. Yeah.
do you
Hmm.
noodle around and like play with the
Yeah.
time nature of music first to find the beginnings of those threads?
Yeah, well, beginnings are usually like totally unknown to me. Yeah, so I find it first, and then those materials might suggest a few different directions.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely not a top-down composer, so I have to find materials first, and then depending on the commission, if it's like 20-minute piece commission, and if this opening idea that I found sounds like a miniature, then I would have to discard it. So I would try to find like several different ideas that fit the piece that I'm trying to compose.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is always a very nebulous process.
Yeah.
I also had just one other question. I loved your when you talked about your ABAB form and then explode
Right.
for your ostinato piece. It
Right.
actually reminded me a lot of how Murakami novels work. There's these
Oh.
plot lines that have nothing to do with each other that run
Mm.
towards each other, and by the end of the book you don't know how those plot lines are going to come together, but they do, and then you're just like fundamentally changed by the end. um,
Yeah. There's.
And so to me, I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. And what are like the different types of like explode, like, you know, 'cause you said you don't really know, you just kind of build it from contrasting material, but like from that point, is it just an intuitive process of how they explode? Or I guess I'm just wondering, you know, they all have different dynamic qualities. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like, you know, while I'm alternating A and B, like in the middle of composition process, I don't have a clear idea how they're going to explode. I just know that they will, because every time I try to do this, like something explodes. Um, so for example, like one of my pieces has this piece section, which is just kind of, which is like a cliche idea, and I used that as an interruption initially, but then it exploded into like this gigantic, like 4-minute romantic piano solo. Yeah, so there's like kind of, there could be this kind of stylistic explosion, or there could be like textural explosion. Yeah, so it's not clear like how that's gonna surface.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how I reveal that. It's
I
really
see a question from Yu Kyung. Should I answer? So how did I become interested in jazz? So yeah, it was kind of a gradual process, kind of organic process. So when I was in grad school in Illinois, I just went to a lot of friends' recitals because Illinois has a huge jazz department. So I was just exposed to a lot of jazz, and I really liked it. So I started working on it more recently. So I'm you know, auditing a jazz class and taking jazz lessons. But my knowledge of jazz is still very much limited. And I don't engage with jazz beyond the harmonic syntax, really, right? Because I don't engage with the improvisation, which is probably the most important feature of jazz as a genre. Um, although, I mean, I can't say that it's not going to come sometime in the future.
Wonderful. So it's past half an hour past 8. So I think we are going to dismiss the meeting, our final meeting. But yeah, just let me say thank you to everyone again. Like well, first of all, thank you to Dr. Juri Seo, for wonderful and inspiring and fun and lots of things. Just so many things. Yes. Um, and also, I would love to thank everyone who did a wonderful job in presenting their own music and inspiring all of us. Specifically, just saying the names: Dr. Juan Park, Jin An, Jihae Chang, and Donald Reed Womack, who was right here until now, and then Dr. Yunji Lee. Good to see you here again, and again Juri Seo. And again, these are the. This is Ms. Yu Kyung Kim, who is the chair of the music committee of the Korean Cultural Society of Boston, and this is Dr. Byung Kim, who is the president of the society. So, and thank you to everyone for all your ongoing support and interests. It's been a pleasure to just share all this wonderful music with all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teksu.
Thank you, Teksu, and thank you, Judy. Yeah.
Thank you,
Great.
Kim. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see you here, Bora, and everyone. Dr. Parker, Andre, Andre, hey.
I think so.
Yeah, and everyone. Hi, Dr. Lee.